Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to The Lovely Grind. My name is Michael Preby, and my website is lovelygrind.com. That's where you're going to find information about my coaching and courses. That's where you can find blog posts and other useful information. So I hope you'll check out lovelygrind.com, and I welcome you back to my YouTube channel and to today's video, which is about the dark side of benzodiazepine medications. Now, a while back, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal entitled Generation Xanax, the Dark Side of America's Wonder Drug. And I was sent this link through email and Instagram by a few people, and I was glad to see the coverage of the dark side of benzodiazepine medications because I think the attitude in pop culture towards them is in general far too casual. But it did strike me as a little ironic that this was heralded as breaking news. The idea that a drug would have a downside. Drugs have downsides, and benzos are a drug. They wouldn't publish an article likely labeled the downside of heroin or the dark side of meth or cocaine. It's understood that these things, while they come with some short-term euphoria, also come with a lot of danger and downside. And I understand this is a little different because they're prescription medications from doctors, but that's exactly what makes this topic so interesting and the dangers so insidious. So that's what we're going to talk about today. To recap my story, I was on Paxil, an SSRI medication, for over a dozen years, and Xanax, a benzo medication, for almost 14 years. Now, those were medications that I was first prescribed in college because of anxiety and some panic attacks. And like many people, the dangers weren't really discussed with me. The downsides weren't really discussed with me by a doctor. Neither were withdrawal effects. And I didn't really have an exit plan. So I continued taking these medications and lived with their effects. A lot of the times it was effects that I wouldn't really understand or realize until later for many years. Until I made the decision to come off those medications when I was in my mid-30s. At the time, I went through a severe withdrawal. It was a protracted withdrawal, but I healed and I found a better way of living, a healthier way of living, and so I share that with all of you through these videos. So first, let's briefly touch on the casual attitude that exists towards benzo medications. One that I had, I'll admit, for many years, and maybe some of you had as well, but one that slowly erodes and turns serious once you live with the effects and the downsides of these medications. So the casual attitude, the one that really gets me, is how it's often portrayed in pop culture, specifically like in movies or TV shows. You'll hear someone getting on a plane and say, oh, just pop a benzo and you'll fall asleep, you'll be fine. Or they're nervous and it's a wedding and someone will say, oh, just have a benzo with your champagne, have a Xanax, you'll be cool. And it's just such a casual attitude. And I guess it rubs me the wrong way because of what I've been through and because of what I've witnessed with other people I've coached. So I know that for a lot of people, there's not much casual about these medications anymore. And it's not just pop culture. A lot of times it's a casual attitude by doctors. It was a pretty casual attitude by the doctor who first prescribed me the medication. Again, no discussion of side effects really, no discussion of withdrawal effects certainly, and no real exit plan, which should be a part of every discussion if someone's going to get on antidepressants or benzo medications. And sometimes the casual attitude, I think, is bought and paid for, obviously. Big Pharma works hand in hand with the local doctors at your local clinic. I mean, those are the middlemen. And that's how they sell their product. So, and sometimes the casual attitude is bought and paid for. Other times it's a product of thoughtlessness and ignorance. And these doctors are busy with other items. They're not just prescribing benzos all day. And so they don't really maybe look into the issue as much as they should or could. And I think finally, in some cases, the casual attitude is contrived. It's contrived to avoid responsibility. There's one person I've been working with and coaching for years, and he saw a top psychiatrist in one of the larger U.S. cities. who told him he's never heard of anyone having problems with benzos in over 30 years that he's been prescribing them. There's just no way that's true. Just no way that's true. So there is that casual attitude, and that article from the Wall Street Journal sheds a light on a more serious take on the issue, which I like. And today we're going to talk about what are the different aspects of the dark side of benzodiazepines. Now, obviously, they work. To get rid of anxiety in the short term, they work. And that's what made them so appealing to me when I was going through panic attacks. And I took one. Not only was I no longer panicking, but I felt very confident, calm, collected. Eventually, those things would turn on me. But obviously, they're appealing in the short term. But what are the downsides or the dark side of these medications? First is going to be the interdose withdrawals or the rebound effects. So what that refers to is the letdown or the come down that happens when the effects of the benzos wear off, the rather short-term effects, especially with ones like Xanax that are faster hitting and acting and might have a bit more of a pronounced and severe interdose withdrawal. And that can feel like an energy drain, a mental fog, but it can also feel like depression or even dread, and it can sure feel like rebound anxiety and feelings of restlessness. So when you're experiencing this at first, you don't know what you're experiencing. Again, you're often not told about it, but it is a very real downside of these medications. And if you're someone who's taking multiple benzos throughout the day, like I was, then your emotional experience is likely a roller coaster of calm and anxiety, highs and lows. And there's never really a lot of good balance there. And that can make it difficult to navigate relationships and responsibilities. Another dark aspect to benzodiazepine drugs is the tolerance withdrawal and the physiological dependence. And let's start with the physiological dependence. That it simply means that, as with alcohol or a lot of illicit drugs, benzos, you can get used to them very quickly. So the amount that used to have a great effect on you no longer does, and you gradually need more and more of the medication to get the desired effect, which is that feeling of calm. And I lived this firsthand to a pretty extreme example, I think. I was prescribed 0.25 milligrams of Xanax as needed when I first went to the doctor in my last year of college. Fast forward a number of years, my prescription was for 4 milligrams per day. And oftentimes I was taking more because I was so dependent on the medications. I needed a lot of it to do anything for me. And in addition, I was constantly trying to stave off that interdose withdrawal. So it was like putting my thumb in a dam and trying to plug all these different holes of anxiety all day, but it washed over me nonetheless. So that physiological dependence and then tolerance withdrawal, which goes hand in hand with that, which just means that eventually some people get to a point where, for whatever reason, they're topped out. Maybe the doctor's not prescribing higher dosages or whatever, but the medication's really no longer doing much at all in the way of anxiety reduction, and instead it's having effects that are just like withdrawal effects when coming off the medications for some people. So sleeplessness or restlessness or body pains or head pressure or increased anxiety and fear and so forth. So they're living withdrawal while you're taking the medications. And the combination of those interdose withdrawals and tolerance withdrawal and physiological dependence, that all had me personally living in an existence that I didn't understand. I just thought basically my anxiety was getting worse and worse and worse. And I can distinctly remember being in a doctor's office and breaking down crying, trying to explain to him how bad my anxiety was and how much I needed a higher dose of the medication. And eventually, because this was one of the rare, at least at the time I feel, rare good doctors that was more of a holistic, natural practitioner looking to talk to me about natural solutions to my anxiety. Because that was his personality, he was reluctant and hesitant to boost me up and up on the medication, so he passed me off to someone who was very willing. And then my story continued down a darker and darker path for a number of years until things came to a head and I got off the medications. Another very insidious, dark aspect to these medications is the psychological dependence that a person becomes accustomed to. It's not just the physical dependence, but mentally, you begin to identify with the medications and kind of grant them supernatural powers, attributing every good thing in your life, every achievement, every piece of energy, every good night's sleep to these medications, so that you begin to think, I can never do X, Y, or Z without them. I could never go to a work meeting without them. I couldn't go to church without them. I can't socialize without them. I can't drive without them. I can't run errands without them or navigate unforeseen stress without them. And on it goes. And that's very, very damaging over time to self-esteem, because you begin to believe that you can't do anything on your own and that you are beholden to these medications to give you some semblance of a normal or decent life, when it's just not true that people need these to exist. Even if you've been on them a while, there was a time when you weren't. God didn't create the heavens and the earth and the sea and the fish and the creatures in the sky and man and woman and then sit down to rest and say, oh, wait a minute, I forgot antidepressants and benzos. That was the missing piece of the puzzle. I'm going back and I'm going to put those in the equation. No, we're able to exist without these things. And yes, life can be difficult and anxiety producing and stressful sometimes. But through learned resiliency and mindset, self-care, and coping skills, we can get through anxiety and stress in natural ways. But when you're so psychologically dependent on these medications, you don't have many coping skills, or at least a lot of people don't. I know I didn't, because the medications seem to be working so well on your own. Why would you need anything else? But again, damaging, because then you start believing you can't do anything without them. And I can tell you from experience, if I was driving somewhere and I ever forgot that orange bottle, I don't care how far down the road I was turning right around and going to get it. So that was my level of psychological dependence. Another dark aspect to benzo medications is something I just touched upon. For many people, while you're on these medications, there's little to no improvement in actual anxiety. There's little to no improvement in learning coping skills and getting to the root causes of what's making a person stressed and anxious, because they're really separate things. It's not like a benzo medication goes into your system with some homing device and just like a heat-seeking missile finds a source of your anxiety psychologically or physiologically and fixes it for you. It just covers things up. I mean, that's the truth of it. Like anything else, any other drug, it covers things up. And so it's easy to get lazy when you're on these medications and not learn the coping skills and the mindset tools and the self-care tools that are necessary to actually bring down baseline anxiety. And maybe get to the root causes of what is causing some of the improper thought patterns or harmful thought patterns. And I know for me, that didn't really happen until I was off the medications and forced to confront some of the trauma issues that I went through, namely in high school, that had led to low self-esteem and very negative self-talk. And I believe that along with some lifestyle choice in college that weren't as healthy as they could have been, all combined for the perfect storm to lead to anxiety and persistent panic. But again, when you're on the medications, there's just not a lot of motivation to pick up some new skills and new tools and really care for yourself physiologically to bring down baseline anxiety or get to those root causes, because the medications seem to be doing the job just fine. And if they are, why would you need to put yourself through all that extra work for nothing, seemingly? So that's another dark side. Is there's just not a lot of improvement in anxiety for some people. And for a lot of people, anxiety might get worse and worse and worse while on the medications for all the reasons we just talked about. Interdose withdrawals and the physiological dependence and tolerance withdrawals and so forth. So that was a frustrating realization over time to think, okay, I did this thing because doctors or psychiatrists told me it was going to help with anxiety, but here I sit, my anxiety's worse, and I'm very confused and scared. How do I fix it? And finally, the dark side of these pills that maybe many of you might be living right now are the withdrawal effects. And again, we talked about tolerance withdrawal, interdose withdrawal, but maybe some of you are tapering these medications, trying to get off them, or maybe some of you are already off of these medications and working through a prolonged healing process. And those withdrawal effects, that's when things can really get dark. I lived it. I talked to people who are living it. And again, there's just usually no discussion when a person gets on these medications about potential withdrawal effects. And even when people go to psychiatrists and doctors nowadays, not all of them, but still a lot of them, the withdrawal effects are ignored and they're gaslit. And I lived through that as well. Just flat out ignored. When I went to a doctor a handful of times and I was in the middle of a benzo taper and having just recently got off Paxil and going through just an awful lot of stuff, nerve pains and head pressure and digestion stuff and anxiety that was through the roof and intrusive thoughts and, you name it, I was going through it. And it was just completely disregarded, like I was talking gibberish or telling them a fairy tale. And that was disheartening, but it was eye-opening. It was really eye-opening because it kind of finally pushed me to a point where I said, I don't need these people or their system again. And that is my goal, to get out of this system so that I'm not beholden to their little world and their opinions and these appointments and everything else. And right or wrong, that attitude really helped me to see the difficult process of tapering and withdrawal through so I could get off the meds and stay off them forever. And that's the good news here, right? We've talked about a lot of darkness, and I know there's dozens and dozens and dozens of withdrawal effects I didn't even mention, and I don't have to because some of you might be living with them. You know what they are. But the good news, withdrawal doesn't last forever, and it is possible to get off these medications, endure withdrawal, learn coping skills, care for yourself, bring down anxiety, and find healing, and live outside and free from the shackles of these medications so that the dark side is something of the past and something you no longer have to worry about. So if you're someone who's currently dealing with anxiety and panic and thinking about taking a benzo, I just urge you to explore every other avenue first, even if it's a little harder and it takes a little longer to see results and it's more confusing. Just try other things first, because in the long run, you might be very glad you did. And if you're someone who's tapering, look forward to being free of that medication and free of the stress of tapering. It is a good feeling. And if you're going through withdrawal effects because of tapering, or if you're already off, know that those don't last forever. Keep taking care of yourself. Keep putting good ideas into your head. Keep leaning on your support systems and keep moving forward one day at a time, because there is a light, that proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. We've talked about a lot of darkness, but there's a light too, and hopefully my videos help you to continue to focus on that light. My name is Michael Preby. My website's Lovely Grind. I hope you'll go there. You can inquire about coaching there, check out my courses, read my blog posts. I'm so glad you came back to my channel and that you continue to check out these videos. Until next time, please remember to take care of yourself and your dreams.